Hi, everybody. My name is Angela. Thanks for joining us today. As you're filing in digitally, I'd love for you to just drop in where you're joining us from. Tell us who you are, what your organization is. So just drop it in the chat while we wait for everybody. IU Health. Very nice. I was just in Indy last week. Dayton Children's. Excellent, excellent. April, I know that name. Good to see you or see you again. Miami UNICEF. All right, all right. Love it. This is how I have to see you because I don't get to see your faces. So I'm just staring into a computer. So thanks for playing along. Excellent. Minneapolis, very nice. VCU showing up strong today. UCLA, nice. Madison. Somebody from Alaska, heck yeah. I love Madison, Wisconsin. For State, Texas State, very nice. Kelly, I know that name. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. St. Mary's, all right, all over the place. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I know we've got a few more folks that'll be rolling in and joining us, but wanted to start with just a little bit of housekeeping to kick us off. So if you've got questions along the way, please make sure you use the Q&A feature to submit those. That helps us keep them separate from the chat messages and make sure that we get them answered. I've got time built in at the end to make sure that we address anything that you might want to talk through. And the most burning question on everybody's mind is, yes, you will receive an email within a couple days of this that will include the recording so you can go back and reference it. So take notes, join along, but know that you'll receive that recording in a couple days. But again, please use the Q&A feature. That's the easiest way for us to just track things so they don't get lost in the chat. So thanks for that. So before we get started, I wanted to take a minute just to introduce myself. I know there's several familiar names and organizations that are joining us today, but for those that I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Angela Altimore. I serve as the AVP of Donor Relations and Experience here at BWF. I come from a background in the donor relations and experience world. I also had the privilege of serving as the past president of the Association of Donor Relations Professionals, which was one of my proudest moments and achievements in my career. I'm joining you today from the Little Apple in Manhattan, Kansas. And when I'm not eating, sleeping, and breathing all things related to donor relations, I'm an avid reader. I love to travel and visit independent bookstores, and I love stationery, all things greeting cards, stationery. I could spend hours shopping for the right card for the right occasion. So with that, that's a little bit about me. So we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about today. We'll give you a quick BWF primer. I know we've got a few folks on the call that aren't as familiar with our organization, so we're going to talk about that at a very high level. Then we're going to talk about some shared definitions and some common terms for our conversation today. And then we'll really dive into the meat of it. We'll talk about exploring the value and the ROI of intentionally thinking about ways to enhance your donor relationships and your donor experiences to help drive your retention numbers. So a little bit about BWF. We are essentially a soup to nuts comprehensive consulting firm. Originally, we were known and specialized in the campaigns and analytics space, but in the last several years, we've really grown to incorporate CRM transition support, annual giving support, digital marketing, strategic communications, and my area of expertise, donor relations and donor experience. I think what sets BWF apart is the collaborative way in which we work. No 2 days for us are ever the same. We work with a variety of consultants with a variety of organizations. And what I love is that I get called into conversations with clients that I'm not working on specifically, but they have a question about donor relations or events or engagement opportunities, and I can help in that conversation. And then I can pull other colleagues that have areas of expertise beyond my own to help navigate those dialogues with clients. So that comprehensive way in which we work is really what sets BWF apart. You'll notice that we have clients all around the globe. We have over 100 team members. We're based in the Minneapolis Twin Cities area, but we have remote staff as well. And we work with just under 300 clients a year. So a variety of folks in the healthcare, higher education space, the social sector, the arts organization, you name it, we're involved with it. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of the areas of services that we offer specific to what you're going to hear about today in our conversation. I certainly encourage you to explore the bwf.com website to learn more, but this is a handful of the services that we have that you're going to hear a little bit more about or can think about in a deeper way throughout our conversation today. So with that, let's get started. When we think about donor relations and donor experiences, when they're optimized for an organization, they lead to increased donor satisfaction, donor loyalty, and donor retention. Successful donor relations and donor experience efforts really enhance the relationships of donors at every single level of your organization, which make them a crucial yet often untapped resource to inspire your donors. So today we're going to explore new ways that challenge the notion of donor relations in your organization, no matter what your title, no matter how small or large your shop is. I've got examples built in throughout to give you an idea of what these can actually look like in practice. But first, I want to start by establishing some shared definitions for our time together. When you think about building a house, there's really three key components: the blueprints, the foundation, and the building finishes that pull it all together. So think of your donor relationships in that same way. If you overlook a component, your house can crumble. Much like you need to be intentional when constructing your house, you should have that same mindset when engaging your donors. The donor relations profession has certainly evolved over the past decade, and now is the time to explore the current role of donor relations in your shop and how to ensure that it's maximized to meet the long-term goals of your mission. Too often, I'm seeing clients that are stuck in the majority of their time focused on stewardship. How fast can they get the acknowledgement out the door, or a name on a donor wall, send a financial report, etc. Now, don't get me wrong. Core stewardship is absolutely essential, but there is so much more additional value that is often left on the table, many times because that value of enhancing those donor relation efforts isn't obvious, or it's simply not advocated for. So let's break down the definitions a bit further to help retrain our brains and spark some new ideas. Donor relations is really the blueprint for the overall donor relationship. Proactively, it looks at the individual donor experiences and seeks ways to optimize, align, and enhance them. Think of this as the proactive focus on holistic relationship management. So in practice, this looks like someone representing donor relations sitting in with other leaders to help the organization think about donors from a 30,000-foot level. It moves beyond simply bringing donor relations to the table once the gift is closed, and instead it invites them to the table before the gift closes to help them add value to the donor journey and gift conversations. We'll dive deeper into more about how this can look shortly. Stewardship is your foundation. You build relationships with donors, but you steward gifts. The solid foundation is absolutely necessary to ensure the long-term success. Core principles include sending your timely acknowledgements, ensuring gift transparency, donor recognition, and impact sharing. In practice, this looks like a shop that delivers personal yet effective acknowledgement letters. It means moving beyond having form letters that sit around for weeks waiting for a signature and still feel impersonal. I've seen this be most successful when leadership or key volunteers have dedicated calendar time held each week waiting to prioritize gratitude, either through handwritten notes, through emails, through quick video snips, through text messages even, or if that's the right medium for that particular donor. This is also a great way to encourage and engage your board members and your key volunteers. We have studies that show that hearing from those key volunteers can really leave a positive impact on your donors. And finally, donor experience. This is the building finishes. So think about granite countertops versus Formica countertops, hardwood floors versus laminate floors. Any chance to leave an impression on donors, which enhances and deepens their relationship with the organization. So in practice, this is taking a basic experience and finding a way to elevate it. One of my favorite examples is understanding a donor passion and finding a way to leverage that to show impact. I was once asked to find a way to express gratitude to a donor who had funded several scholarships at a high school. Her giving commitment was fulfilled, and we had been told that the gift would not be renewed. So when I was trying to find a unique way to express gratitude and impact to her, I learned that she was an avid scrapbooker. I decided to use that as a medium instead of a traditional printed report. I contacted the former scholarship recipients and I asked them to write letters updating them about where life had taken them since high school. I pulled their old yearbook photos and I crafted pages with the letters that they provided, new photos of their families and what they were doing today, as well as their old high school headshots. The day after the scrapbook delivered, I was on pins and needles. And all of a sudden in my office, a huge bouquet of flowers arrived. It was complete with a thank you note from the donor, filled with gratitude. The donor sent me a thank you for sending her a thank you. She mentioned how moved she was by the book and that she could feel the love on each page. Included in her note was a commitment to fund the scholarship for several more years. Now, it would have been easy to simply create a traditional impact report, but by taking the time to understand what speaks to your donors, that's the finishing touch that can elevate your donor experience and transition your work from a house to a home. In his book, Retention Fundraising, Roger Craven shares the top 7 reasons why people keep giving. Implementation of a solid donor relations blueprint, including that solid stewardship foundation and intentional focus on elevating donor experiences helps ensure that you hit all 7 of these, which can result in higher retention levels. By inviting donors into the shared community with other supporters and other volunteers is also essential. They have a desire to be involved and to feel valued. By engaging them and asking them for their insights, you provide them a chance to understand your organization at a deeper level. In doing so, you help donors understand the value and the contributions of voices and perspectives of staff, volunteers, and beneficiaries. It's truly a chance to celebrate each group working together for the greater good. Another way to tackle these 7 reasons head on is to ensure that service is the expectation of all staff. We shouldn't shy away from the fact that customer service, or in our case, donor service, is essential to maintaining strong donor relationships. Make a list of common calls and emails that come in and train your staff to address those calls and emails when they arrive. Instead of passing a call along to 8 different staff members before finding a resolution, set the expectation up front that everyone should be comfortable conversing with donors. This again goes to building that trust with the entire organization instead of with one department or one person. Part of this training should also include donor-friendly language. I love acronyms as much as the next person, but when we toss around terms like MOU and CRUT and LOI, we often lose things in translation to our donors. So try to ensure that that internal language stays internal and that interactions with donors are straightforward and use terms that they understand. Does everyone in your organization, no matter their title, know how to take a gift over the phone or how to make a gift online? I bet they don't. If not, add that to your training list. So in practice, this looks like training for tone. At an upcoming all-staff meeting or a retreat, ask each staff member to write down a list of the ways that they interact with donors directly or indirectly. Now, obviously, some lists are going to be longer than others, depending on the role that they play, but everyone should be able to come up with at least one example. Then spend some time talking through customer service fundamentals. The importance of tone can go a long way in donor interactions. Think about what sets the great customer service interactions that you've had apart from the abysmal ones. And oftentimes, it's the tone. Did the staff member sound pleasant and engaging, or did they just feel like they were going through the motions? Tone is a very quick way to make or break an experience. By focusing on enriching the donor experience at the base level, organizations can achieve higher ROI for their fundraising initiatives. Donor relations and donor experiences can enhance donor loyalty, increase satisfaction, deepen engagement, and build confidence. We know from our Engage DX client survey work that very engaged donors are 5 times more likely to make an organization their top giving priority. We also know that very engaged donors are 3 times more likely to have a planned gift and are nearly 3 times more likely to be a loyal donor. And finally, they were also nearly 5% more times likely to have made a gift over $10,000 in the last 5 years. When well executed, strategic donor relations efforts can ensure that all donors feel seen and engaged, not simply those who meet with a fundraiser or those who volunteer. It ensures that they understand the importance of their gifts firsthand and they feel as though they're part of that bigger community that's making a difference. Remember that a gift of $100 is just as treasured to someone who gives that $100 as a gift of $10,000 is to a donor who gives $10,000. By helping donors understand that they're valued and sharing the collective impact that they have on our organizations is a crucial step towards inspiring them to give again and again. I can think of countless examples I've seen where donors' first gift 30 years ago was $10, and now today they're considered major donors to their organization. If you don't know the amount of a key donor's first gift and the story behind it, take the time to ask. It can often lead to a greater conversation about their loyalty. I once asked a donor about the first gift they made in the early 1970s. It was $5. It's to a fund that was no longer in existence, so I literally had no documentation about it to reference. I didn't know what it was for. So I asked them. I figured it would be to the art department because that's where a majority of their giving was directed at that time. It turns out that it was to help students who were single parents struggling to navigate coursework while maintaining home life. They were students themselves at the time, and they saw that there was a dedicated single mom in their class who was juggling 2 jobs, 2 kids, and a part-time class load. The donor knew how exhausted they felt as a traditional student, so they couldn't imagine the level of exhaustion and stress that this classmate must be experiencing. So they made a gift of $5 to the annual scholarship that student benefited from. Hearing this story helped me understand their motivations, and I was able to share with them that there were some current funds that were still in existence to help non-traditional students. That led us to a gift conversation in an area of interest that I might not have uncovered if I hadn't taken the time to ask the question. That story is a perfect example of the importance of engaging donors at all levels. Many major gift donors start as annual donors who respond to a solicitation. The value of annual giving programs is widely known. As my colleague James Bernard will tell you, the cornerstone of a successful annual giving program lies in its ability to forge strong connections with donors. Shops that take the time to implement well thought out annual giving strategies can establish this pipeline of loyal donors. But your annual giving colleagues shouldn't have to do this and carry this burden alone, nor should your fundraisers. There's generally a higher churn rate in these areas than there is in donor relations. So by broadening the ownership to include donor relations, you bring additional value to your organization. It's important to recognize that every staff member serves as a fundraiser in your organization, no matter their job description, in the same way that everyone plays a role in assuring a positive donor experience for donors of all levels. It's widely accepted that it costs more to secure new donors than to retain existing donors. So why would you not invest in being a donor through intentional and well-planned donor relations and donor experience? How does your investment in being a donor compare to your investment in becoming a donor? I'm going to ask you that again. How does your investment in being a donor compare to your investment in becoming a donor? By limiting the role and the definition of donor relations, you risk drops in donor retention and decrease lifetime value. But by establishing shared responsibility, you bring staff closer to the mission of your work, which then helps deepen their work experience and can help counteract that burnout and turnover. This also serves as a collaborative opportunity to view work from traditionally siloed departments: annual giving, discovery officers, stewardship, events, annual alumni relations, membership or patron relations. It really ensures that efforts are aligned for a holistic approach. This collaborative approach enhances the long-term donor relationship with an organization by building trust. Ensuring that teams have this shared understanding of terminology is also important. Many departments are doing similar work that has the potential for overlap, so clear communication and a shared understanding of definitions is an important step in building your collaboration. An evolved donor relations approach looks holistically at the donor relationship and offers suggestions to strengthen and evolve that relationship. Now, as I mentioned earlier, donor relations staff often have a longer tenure in nonprofits than fundraisers. This history enables them to bring a historical context, which can propel philanthropic commitment. Savvy shops use this to their advantage. If given the opportunity to interact with donors directly, they can also serve as a consistent face during staff transition, bringing comfort and a sense of stability to your donors. This can have more value than you might expect. I recall once taking a call from a donor who was frustrated because they'd worked with 3 different development officers over the course of 5 years. It left them unsettled and frustrated, feeling like they were always starting their relationship with our organization over. So I took this as a chance to establish myself as an additional point of contact for them, and I assured that they could reach out to me at any time. When they were introduced to their new development officer, they maintained contact with me at the same time, and I stayed behind the scenes and up to date on their interactions. I was able to step in when that development officer went on parental leave and keep the relationship warm, which then helped to ensure that the development officer could come right back into the gift conversation when they returned. That partnership not only helped the donor feel more confident in our organization, but it helped to strengthen the internal partnership that I had with that development officer. Incorporating a donor relations mindset can add rich and unique insights during portfolio reviews and proposal creation, both of which can lead to a more donor-centric approach. Not only does this allow for the internal strong collaboration, but this deepened connection and shared focus leads to stronger relationships with the donors and the organization. Donors can tell when there are solid internal working relationships, which bolsters their confidence in the work that you do. I spoke about this concept recently in a room full of donor relations professionals. I asked how many of them sat in on portfolio reviews, and only a handful raised their hands. But those who did spoke of the value that they bring to the conversations. Instead of simply moving a donor out of a portfolio, they offered ideas that might help bring new life to that interaction. I've experienced this firsthand. When a suggestion was made to remove a particular donor from a portfolio because they had stopped responding to the last several outreach attempts by the development officer, I suggested that we try to engage them in a new way. I happened to know we had an event coming up in an area where they were minimally engaged, but I knew that they had a deep connection with the staff member in charge. So we asked that staff member to invite them to the event. And guess what? They said yes. They came to the event. The development officer attended, and that was just the spark that we needed to reconnect and advance that relationship. Sometimes it really is as easy as having a new set of eyes at the table for the conversation. Having donor relations involved in the proposal process is also an often overlooked opportunity. If they know the donors, they may be able to speak to what they have learned about them through their daily work. I once met with a donor and I asked her for feedback on reporting that we were sending to her on a yearly basis. Part of that content included printed letters from over 100 beneficiaries that she supported. She said that while she appreciated that, she only really read a small handful of them and the rest of them just went untouched. She thought maybe we could spend our time in a better way. So I was able to take that feedback and bring it to the table when we were talking about future reporting and proposals for her. Instead of including pages and pages of content, we learned that keeping things simple for this particular donor was a much better approach. And she actually recognized that. The next time we sent a report, she sent me an email and said, gosh, it looks so much different this year. I read it from cover to cover. Thank you so much. So she saw that I listened to her feedback and took it to heart. If you're unsure about what the preferences are, take time to gather those preferences on the topic to better inform your content. The additional bonus is that you're also setting up long-term success for impact reporting. If your donor relations team understands what was expected of the gift in the proposal process and what's important to the donor, Having them know that up front will make for stronger impact reporting down the road. Your donor relations or donor experience staff members are often well equipped to draw a donor closer to your organization. Empowering this work to happen allows your fundraisers to focus on the current gift acquisition. Now, I know it can be hard for development officers to see the value in introducing another staff member into the conversation, but they should be encouraged to do so. And donor relations staff may be hesitant to step out from behind the curtain to engage with donors, but their unique skills often make them a natural fit. So I encourage you to at least explore it. Donors' hearts are full of passion, not cash. Our organizations often overlook the value of spending time tapping into these passions, which is a critical step to fuel the long-term relationship-based solicitations. In my intro, you heard me mention that I was an avid stationery fan. And that's rooted in my first career, which was 12 years spent with Hallmark cards. But after I jumped into the nonprofit space, I found myself missing the retail side. And so I spotted an opportunity to volunteer in the gift shop of a children's hospital. I loved every minute of my volunteer service there. Each shift, I got to strike up conversations with parents who were just passing time while their kid was in surgery, doctors or nurses who just came down for a candy bar during a long shift, or kids that were stopping by to pick out a small toy or treat to celebrate a successful visit. My handful of hours each week there drew me closer and closer to the mission of that organization. Now, I wish they could say that they had added me as a potential donor or engaged with me in a gift conversation or even a generic solicitation, but they didn't. Had they asked me, I would have given it in a heartbeat. But instead, my connection ended shortly after my last volunteer shift ended. So how can you focus on tapping into that passion and seeking ways to engage donors to deepen the connection? Are you inviting your volunteers into giving conversations? And are you inviting your donors into engaged in volunteer opportunities? Now, it should be noted that donor relations and donor experience work is valuable no matter the size of your staff. In smaller shops, these efforts are often one of multiple hats worn by many staff members. And in large shops, there might be an entire team that exists for this work. But even if you don't have full-time staff with donor relations in their title, you likely have staff who are completing such tasks, whether they realize it or not. The importance of donor relations is relevant no matter the size of your organization, and the ideas that we're talking about today are adaptable for shops of all sizes. So taking what we've just covered to heart, I challenge you to ask yourself this: where do you feel donor relations should be further optimized? And how might you use donor relations to its fullest potential? We've talked briefly about reimagining the work of donor relations in your organization. Let's explore how doing so can add value along each stage of the donor journey. Donor relations staff often engage with individuals ranging from annual donors to major donors and principal donors. This unique position can help identify individuals who may be ready to connect with a donor experience officer or a development officer. If a donor reaches out and wants to talk about making a gift, a skilled donor relations professional can pose questions to better understand the donor's intent and connect them with the best person to provide that satisfying donor experience. Think of your DR staff as lead generators and train them accordingly. In practice, this looks like including your donor relations staff in basic fundraising training. Teach them the cues and the prompts to listen for that can help gauge donor interest. Ensuring donor relations staff has a strong understanding of the fundraising structure and the terminology so they know where to send leads is critical. A bonus is that this also helps build trust with your fundraisers. It serves as an opportunity for that increased collaborative partnership that we know is so essential to a successful shop. Strong leaders view donor relations as an additional tool for advancing the pipeline. As I mentioned before, if a donor in a portfolio has gone cold for a development officer, asking a donor relations staffer to brainstorm ways to reignite the spark is a great next step. From creating custom impact reports to personal one-to-one interactions with the beneficiary or crafting high-end donor experience for them, these staff members offer immense value in the cultivation phase if you just involve them. With pressure on development officers to close the next gift and the next gift and the next gift, thinking about things through a donor relations perspective of the situation from that 30,000-foot level can be invaluable into identifying new ways to advance the relationship, and it allows your development officers to stay focused on the fundraising. This looks like inviting a donor relations representative to a portfolio review meeting with an officer to offer those unique perspectives. Or better yet, have them sit in on a prospect development training if you have that, to be able to learn how to better partner with their prospect research team. Strategic donor relations can also enhance the annual giving solicitation efforts by helping combat the notion that we hate. I only hear from you when you want money. For example, if a solicitation is dropping in August to raise funds for counseling support at a shelter, creating a preemptive impact piece or email highlighting past donor-driven success areas from that program can help set the stage for the solicitation that the donor will receive in a few weeks. Think of it as the starter course before the main meal, which is the solicitation. We know that donors want a report on the measurable results achieved to date in a program or project that they have funded before they're asked for another gift. And this is the perfect way to ensure that it happens. So in practice, this looks like having your annual giving staff review their solicitation calendar with donor relations and have the staff identify areas where some strategic outreach can help set the stage for that upcoming solicitation. Another bonus is that this is a great way to repurpose or reuse existing content from other communications pieces, from events, from videos. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. At the retention stage is really where your solid stewardship foundation comes into play. Certainly, timely acknowledgments remain important, as is active recognition, but showing impact is absolutely vital here. Showing the impact can come in many forms. Impact reports are fairly traditional, but even more impactful can just be picking up the phone and taking a few minutes to call the donor to talk to them. In practice, imagine if you gave $500 a year to an organization, and one day the executive director or a staff member called you to simply say, "Thank you for your consistent giving. I know that you've been an ongoing supporter for 5 years, and I just wanted to pause and say thank you. If you have 5 minutes, I'd love to share a couple of recent highlights that have happened, in large part thanks to your generosity." Now, even if they say no, you've planted that seed and you can offer your phone number for them to call back at a more convenient time. Talk about taking a moment to create a powerful interaction. Loyalty is the stage where donor experiences really start to shine. Donors have shown you over and over that your mission matters to them by their giving behavior. So now it's your chance to show them that you know them and that you value them. At this point in the relationship, attention to detail and the ability to surprise and delight matter more than ever. We talked earlier about the value of training staff on fundraising fundamentals, but it's equally important to train all staff on how to enhance experiences. If we're going to show donors we know them at a deep level, we need to learn unique things about them to provide highly customized experiences and interactions. Ask your staff to sit down and create a list of cues to look for when interacting with donors. Do they have a favorite beverage, a favorite dessert? What style of decor is their home or office decorated in? Do they have hobbies or passions? Do they have reporting preferences? Are they statistics heavy and that's what they want to look at? Or do they spend hours reading the stories over and over again? Why do these things matter? Documenting this information formally in a CRM allows it to live on after a single staff member who has that information departs your organization. It allows you to bolster your historical context in that particular relationship. When I started as a gift officer, I had a portfolio of donors in the Denver area. On one of my first visits, I learned that one of them missed popcorn from a local shop back in Omaha where I was based. So I made note of that. And on my next visit, I took a small bag of popcorn with me. They were absolutely delighted and impressed that I remembered this small detail. They informed me that it was small efforts like this that set my organization apart and was one of the reasons that they continued to remain loyal to us. Now that we have a blueprint in place and have an established solid foundation, it's time to explore how we make the house the home. This is where donor experience really comes into play. As I mentioned earlier, donor experience is any chance to leave an impression on a donor which enhances and deepens their relationship with your organization. Good donor experience moves a donor closer to the mission and to your organization. It ensures that they feel more connected. So ask yourself these questions. Are your donors spending more or less time with your organization? And do you have to exert more and more marketing efforts to gain their attention? Or are you offering experiences that create demand on their own? Today, people highly value experiences that engage them in personable and memorable ways. For example, let's talk shopping for a minute. Now, when I need new work clothes, I used to go to the mall and I try on pair after pair of pants, trying to find some that would fit without alterations. Now, when you're 5 foot tall, that's hard. When you live in a small town, it's nearly impossible. Then I discovered a clothing delivery service specifically designed for petites. I can tell them what I'm looking for, I can set my budget, set my delivery frequency, and they send me a box of items for consideration. I don't have to leave my house. The experience feels highly personal to me. I know that the note that they include from the personal shopper is probably identical or really similar to ones that they send to their others, but they found a way to make the experience feel personal to me. Instead of the dread of having to navigate the mall and feeling the frustration of leaving empty handed, I almost always find at least one item to keep, and usually I find more. I return what I don't want, I provide feedback, and then they listen to my feedback and they make adjustments for my next shipment. It feels like they've listened and they take my feedback to heart. Talk about providing a great experience. You may be thinking, that's great, but I can't take that approach for all my donors. So let's unpack that. It's all about your approach. Step by step is the best way to embrace personalized customization. So think back to your childhood. Did you ever play with Legos? What can you build with them? Anything, right? Mass customization is like playing with Legos. Start by taking an inventory of all your individual blocks. What are the core individual things that you can offer today? Maybe it's a newsletter, a phone call, an invitation to an event, a tour, a behind the scenes sneak peek at a performance, volunteering opportunity, video content, etc. Then identify a group of people or a bucket of donors with similar areas of interest. So maybe you have a small group of active volunteers that you want to solicit. Or maybe you have a group of major gift donors who have stopped returning your calls. Or perhaps you have a group of first-time donors that you want to keep engaged before their next solicitation. Then go back and look at your Lego inventory and pick and choose the appropriate blocks to build that customized experience for that select group. I sort of envision this looking like the booklet that comes with those really complex Lego sets. You know the ones I'm talking about. Step 1, send an email of a video with a thank you message from staff. Step 2, invite to behind the scenes tour of an upcoming production. Step 3, send a quick note highlighting an upcoming performance that you hope to see them at, and so on and so forth. Now a note, beware of variety versus customization. Variety is trying to build as much content or create as many touch points as you can in hopes of having them ready when the right donor comes along. Instead, spend your time focused on customization. This is observing or hearing what a donor wants and then producing a response to meet or hopefully surpass their desires and expectations. Over time, as you get feedback from donors, you can refine your Lego blocks to deepen the experience for your donors. This ensures that your offerings are meaningful to them instead of trying to simply throw everything to the wall and see what sticks. It's important to note that experiences happen inside individuals. These experiences are internal reactions to the events that are staged outside of us. So while the staging may be the same for the entire group, the actual experience is unique to each individual. You can create the same donor experience journey for a group of donors, and it will impact them each differently. Think of when you go to the movies with a friend. Your experiences could vary wildly. You stop at the snack bar, and then you both settle into your seats for the show. You got just the right balance of extra butter on your popcorn. You have an open seat next to you to spread out. See a trailer for a flick starring your new favorite actor, and you think the movie was great. The overall experience, 5 out of 5 stars. Your friend likes Coca-Cola and the theater only serves Pepsi. They're seated next to a loud breather that distracts them for the next 2 hours. That's the worst. The trailers all look lame, and they thought the book was better than the movie. Overall experience, 2 out of 5 stars. So just remember, while we can spend hours and hours creating the perfect experience, we only can control so much. We need to look at the Lego offerings and do the best we can with the tools that we have at hand. Finding ways to adapt and to adjust is crucial to crafting these experiences, and seeking feedback is essential for growth. So perhaps you make a note about your friend's soda preference and the next time you pick a theater that serves Coca-Cola. However, you also have to come to peace that, in fact, on occasion, you might just get stuck in a movie theater with a kid kicking your seat for half the show. Experiences often unfold over a duration of time. Taking the time to design the time that donors are spending with your organization is an important yet often overlooked step. I'm going to repeat that. Taking the time to design the time that donors are spending with you is important. In some cases, this can evolve over weeks or months, but more likely it will actually take years, which is all the more reason to start today. It's not simply about one meeting or one event. It's about the comprehensive interactions with your organization over the donor's lifetime. We need to design experiences that not only entertain, but then involve our donors in the unfolding story. Such efforts allow donors to see themselves as part of the mission of the organization. They feel like they have that inside access, which allows them to feel like they're part of the team. Creating this sense of community empowers them to stay connected and deepen their commitment to our organization. Using donor experiences to build that community is often overlooked opportunity in nonprofits. But this is a great space to explore the for-profit sector for inspiration. So think about a restaurant like Chick-fil-A. Not only do they normally have a steady business during their standard operating hours, but they found creative ways to engage their customers beyond the normal visit. They have campouts for new restaurant openings. They have kids' craft nights, parent-kid date nights. They have Cow Appreciation Day. Not only that, but they do plush cow drops at local sporting events. All of these things help bring their brand to life and keep it top of mind for their customers. These intentional experiences allow their customers to view their time attending these events as well spent. But more importantly for Chick-fil-A, the more time they spend with Chick-fil-A in a year, the more likely it is to translate to more profits. So if you get donors to spend more time with your organization, they'll become more invested, both emotionally and often financially. Think about the unique interactions with brands that you've had and the lessons you could take from them. I recently bought some socks online. A few days later, I got a survey asking about my purchase. While many of the questions were about my shopping experience, several wanted to understand my knowledge of the social service side of their operation. Did I know that for every pair of socks that they sold, they donated one to a local shelter? About a month later, that sock company sent me an impact report, sharing the good work achieved thanks to people like me who bought socks from them. That was a memorable experience that made me consider socks way more than I ever thought that I would. By creating moments of shared meaning, you can bring your donors closer to your organization. Experiences that leave a lasting impact on donors deepen their ties to the community of people like them who are committed to you. And as a result, it strengthens their ties to you. This becomes even more important if you don't have a physical space that they can visit, or if they can't make it to your location. Then you have to get even more creative about bringing your work to them. This is where I wish I could see your hands. How many of you had a viewfinder as a kid? So for those who might not know what a viewfinder is, it's a toy that included little discs of images that you held up to the light and you flip through them over and over again. Let me tell you, they're way more magical than scrolling through photos on your phone. I recall finding one of images when we went on a trip to Mount Rushmore that I thought was great. Today, you can order custom ones and use that as a way to showcase your organization to folks that might not be able to see it in person for whatever reason. Bonus for the nostalgia that it can bring to folks who had one as a kid, or to introduce it to people who have never seen one before. Creativity can really help you deepen the meaning and make the connection stronger. The Magic Castle Hotel in Los Angeles is a basic hotel that was trying to come up with a creative solution to compete with those bigger resorts hotels that are nearby. Located near their swimming pool, they installed a red phone. When you pick it up, someone on the end answers, "Popsicle hotline." Within minutes, a server arrives poolside with a silver tray and a variety of popsicles to choose from at absolutely no charge. How simple. So how can you create your own Magic Castle hotel experience? Events, like other forms of donor experience, can be a useful tool for small or large groups or be tailored to individuals. Creating those magical experiences that surprise and delight donors are effective ways to deepen their relationship with your organization. Be intentional and creative when developing a gathering. What transitions or milestones might you look to celebrate or recognize beyond the giving threshold? Instead of hosting yet another donor appreciation dinner, especially by giving levels, think about taking time to learn what you want your attendees to walk away with from that gathering. What's the purpose? If you start with that goal in mind, then you can build your event concept and your attendee list and your program around it to achieve that goal. Some of the more memorable experiences these days are often found beyond the traditional ballroom. Events no longer have to be a huge gala. Think about the experiences that have become popular in small spaces, like a room, escape rooms, nap rooms, board game cafes, cat cafes, even rage rooms. A lot can be done in a single space if you get creative. One of my favorite examples I've seen recently is using a unique vehicle to deliver experience. I know of a local symphony that created a self-contained portable stage that tours the city, offering free traveling performances for small groups of musicians. They call it the mobile music box, as they refer to it, and it started during the pandemic, and it's actually still in operation today. And they use it as a way to achieve their mission of making high-quality music accessible for all. So I encourage you, when thinking about donor experiences, from volunteering to attending events and everything in between, seek ways for your donors to walk away thinking, I did something that mattered today. To close, I want to revisit where I started. When donor relations and donor experience are optimized for an organization, they lead to increased donor satisfaction, donor loyalty, and donor retention. Successful donor relations and donor experience efforts truly enhance the relationship of donors at every single level to your organization and make them a crucial resource to inspire donors. Investing in being a donor is just as important, if not more important, than becoming a donor. If you are a donor relations professional in this call, I challenge you to think about ways to elevate your work, to tackle the problems that are keeping your leaders up at night. If you're the manager or a leader in another department, I encourage you to advocate for an enhanced focus on donor relations beyond what is currently being offered. And if you're not sure what's already being offered, that's a whole nother issue. So take the time to ask. And for the executive leaders on the call tuning in, I encourage you to think about your donor relations and donor experience efforts in a new light and explore how you can elevate these efforts to tackle the issues that are keeping you up at night. And if you need help, we are ready to support and elevate your efforts. So with that, I'm going to pull up the Q&A and see what we've got that's come in. Can you talk a bit more about investing in being a donor is just important in becoming a donor? Absolutely. So what I mean by that is think about how much money an organization spends in securing new donors. Some places buy lists, some places, whatever you're doing to spend that fund to acquire new donors, and compare that to how much money you're spending to retain the donors that you have. Oftentimes it seems like the focus is on acquiring donors, even there's countless studies out there that show you it's less expensive to retain the donors that you have instead of trying to acquire the new donors. So how are you investing in engaging those folks that have already raised their hand and said, yes, I'm in, I support you, I believe in your mission and your cause? What are you doing to deepen that commitment and that experience and engage them at a deeper level to keep them giving, instead of simply saying, churn and burn, let's get as many new donors in as we can? I've got somebody who wants to know what the first step, what would I recommend as the first step to put some of these into practice? I would say writing it all down. Write down all the big things that resonated with you from what we talked about today or what you heard today, and then prioritize. You're likely not going to be able to tackle all of them, and that's okay. If you're not in leadership, take some of these concepts to your leadership and use them as ways to strike up conversations about how they could be used to implement some of the big challenges that you're facing in your organization. That's going to look different for everybody. Being able to come to the table with solutions instead of just saying, I'm understaffed or I need more help. I think being able to be proactive and part of that solution is certainly can be beneficial. Share a few examples of leveraging donor relations effectively in a small shop. Absolutely. So I would start by taking a look at what does a week look like for you? What are the different activities that you're doing? What are the different tasks that you have? And I would bet by doing that, you're going to identify some of these things that are focused probably on the stewardship side, the acknowledgement letter process, if you still have honor rolls, the other recognition giving societies, that sort of thing, gift clubs. Are sort of components of that, and then being able to figure out where there are areas of opportunity that we might want to explore further, or are these things that we're doing the right things? Are they still as efficient and effective as we can be? If you're still doing honor rolls, give me a call and let's have a conversation, because that's a very interesting place to explore to free up some time that we, in a way that we know isn't always moving the needle as much as folks think it does for donors. I think, let's see, we've got another one. Tips for this is a good one. Tips for overcoming bad donor experiences. Yes, not every experience is going to be a good donor experience, as much as we wish that it was. So I think it's that ability to listen and learn. I think when we have a donor that reaches out to us in frustration, in anger, they're reaching out because they care about the mission of the organization. So that ability to listen, even if we can't change the outcome, a decision has been made that they're not happy with, or legislation has come into play that they don't support. Oftentimes our hands as organizations are tied and there's only so much we can do, but we can listen. I think that ability to listen and let them feel heard is a really important step. And sometimes if you do that, more often than not, my experience is that will continue then to allow that relationship to thrive going forward. Unique ways to provide virtual experiences. Absolutely. So, they were really popular, I think, during the pandemic. And now from an event perspective, we're often seeing that there's not quite as much interest. We're seeing that there are more folks interested in the face-to-face gathering. But the virtual space, I think there's different video technologies that can help with that. Certainly engaging through Zoom calls where you're doing interactions or demonstrations. I know of one shop that recently did cooking classes where they had cooking was essential to the work that they do. And so they brought together a group of folks. They sent an ingredient list beforehand to a group of donors that were invited to join the call. The donors were able to buy their own ingredients. And then they did a live stream cooking lesson in real time to engage in that space. So I think thinking about what are you doing that's unique to your mission and how can you think about sharing that in a digital or virtual space to engage folks is a lovely opportunity. Define donor honor roll in this context. Yes, I would say a list of printed donors. Oftentimes it's by giving level. Sometimes it's printed, sometimes it's digital. It's probably one of the most common tools that are out there. And different organizations, they're very powerful and can resonate highly in the arts space and a lot of other spaces. They don't move the needle. From a donor perspective, they would have given that level, whether they were on an honor roll or not. So we're seeing that is one of the areas that people are revisiting to see if they can free up that time spent on those, because if you've ever been involved in an honor roll, you understand the time drain that they can be, and then repurposing and thinking about other ways to use that time that can have a bigger impact on recognizing your donors. So moving from, heard me talk about active recognition versus passive recognition. So that ability to engage donors more in the recognition instead of simply slapping their name on a list. And how do you involve them more in that process? Looking to see, we've got a couple that have come in the chat. What is your approach? What is your approach to getting donor relations in the room for those portfolio meetings? It depends on what position you are in. I would say if you're a leader, just invite them along. If you're not, I think you can be able to say, go to them and have a conversation to say, this is something that I think could be beneficial. I'd like to try just sitting in on 1 or 2 meetings to see how it goes and see if there's something additional value that I can bring to the team. If that doesn't work, then there's always, I found success also in just saying, I'm trying to understand the broader organization at a deeper level to do better at my job. Can I sit in on one of these meetings just to see what it's like? Just go and try to be invited as a fly on the wall. And once you're in the room, then try to find ways, maybe slowly, maybe it's not in the first conversation, but just find ways to engage in the conversation. And my experience has been that over time, then you get invited into the room on your own without having to ask. So I think there's a couple ways that you can approach it depending on where you are. But anytime you can try to be shown as a value add to the organization, especially if you can help tackle some of the things that you know are the challenges, I think that's a good win, a good place to start. Okay, I think we've caught up on all the questions. So I'm going to make sure we do a couple more things here. We'd love to learn a little bit more about what's on your mind. And so if you wouldn't mind taking just a minute, a quick webinar poll, we'd just like to ask you a couple questions to better understand what it is that's on your mind and what are the topics that you want to learn more about or areas that you're really interested in. So would sure love if you could participate in this poll. We've got just, I think, 3 quick questions we're going to ask you. I'm excited to go back through all the chat and see what you guys have been talking about. I'm hoping that I had a few raised hands during the viewfinder part. It makes me wish I still had mine. I think we've got a couple more questions to ask too. Just making sure we've got the last question posted. All right, and I'm going to do a quick plug here for my colleagues. So upcoming, just to wind things down, on November 7th, my colleagues James and Josh are going to talk about all things about the long-term value of the everyday donor. So I know we had a lot of annual giving folks that were on the call today. Certainly think this is a good one to listen to. I'm excited about this one. And there's my contact information. So I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn, send me some connection, or contact me, drop me an email. I sure appreciate you taking an hour out of your day. For those of you that are on the East Coast and in the path of the hurricane, know that we're thinking about you and sending you good thoughts. And thank you so much. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day and take care. We'll see you next time.